the interviewer. And this interview is taking place Saturday the 11th in Cimarron, Kansas. Okay, when and where were you born?
I was born in Bakersfield, California, in July the 5th, 1923.
Okay. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I had 4 sisters. I'm the youngest of 5 girls.
Okay, so you haven't lived in Kansas your whole life, but when did you move here?
Well, when I came here, I graduated from high school in 1941, and then when I went to school there in 1943, and when we were married, I went back to California. We were married in California, and then my husband was at that time, he had already gone to Kansas City for pre-dental. And so then when we were married and we moved to Kansas City, or I went to Kansas City because he was there in Kansas City, so that would be in 1943. And then he graduated in 1946, and that's when we came over here to Cimarron. He actually comes from Ingalls. He grew up in Ingalls.
Okay. What was your maiden name?
Schmidt.
How do you spell that?
Schmidt.
Thank you. What was your family background?
My background was we lived in the city, now on a farm. My dad was he worked for the Santa Fe Railroad, and my mother, of course, she loved to cook, and so she had several, I guess, times when she either cooked or had a cafe or something like that, okay. But she basically was at home too. So okay. That would be in Bakersfield.
Okay. And so you went through high school. Did you go to college?
2 years. It was but more at Tabor College.
Okay.
In Hillsboro.
Okay, what was your spouse's name?
Lila Penner.
Okay, so when were you married? You were married in California, right?
Yes, in California. And it was Labor Day, September 6th, 1943. My husband we always kidded each other. We got married on Labor Day, and he always said that he's been laboring ever since.
Do you remember where you were or what you were doing? Okay. I have information that the stock market crashed on the week of October 29th in 1929. That's when it crashed.
Uh-huh.
Do you remember?
I was only 6 years old.
Oh, you're 6, okay. Okay.
So I don't remember too much of what I do remember. Okay, let's go back. When I was born, as I say, my dad worked for the railroad, and but we lived out at that time. We lived on a 10-acre piece of ground, and then I guess there was, at that time, see, around Bakersfield, it's oil. It has oil wells, and the place where we were living, evidently, if we would have known it, my dad failed to keep the mineral rights, and so there were, I guess, a couple. This is stories. I was born, but then as far as remembering all of it, but as far as stories go, well, then the fellows offered some money, to buy the land, and as a result, we moved into town then, and then a little bit later on, then they had oil wells on that piece of ground. We did not have the rights to the mineral rights to it, and so that was one of the places that my dad, just didn't think, or anyhow, as far as being rich or anything like that. We were not rich. So, yeah, then that's when we moved into town, what we'd call it, into town. And let's see, what else did you ask?
Just if you remember
What
you were doing.
Oh, okay. Well, so then I would have been about 6 years old about that time. So that's when we would have been moved in. And at that time, there was a kind of a small station, gas station in connection with the house. And so that's probably where I was living at that time. And it was on a corner, and cars would come around and around that way, and then they would go on up to what we would call King. Anyhow, it was kind of like a park. And but then, for some reason or other, these are kind of hardships, that you go through in life. And they switched somehow or other. The people did not come around that much anymore, so they did not get gas. My mother was one that really kind of helped. Had control of that. So so then that kind of left us high and dry, you might say. And so that would be, I guess, some of the stories that I would know about that time. And my dad, then, as he was working at the railroad, he was only working for 4 days a week at that time. It had been, I think, when the stock market crashed. Yeah. So, that's probably about all that I remember. I know that we never did have to go hungry or anything like that, but I think out on the West Coast, maybe it wasn't quite as bad as it was on the East Coast. For some reason, I had that in my mind. That probably was the case.
Were you old enough, did you have to find a job to help out with your family, or just your?
No, I didn't, but my oldest sister did. Yeah, she was not. She was still in high school, and so she was able to get work with a wealthier family, and so she helped with the our family needs.
What did she do for that family?
It was keeping house, cleaning house, housework.
So you didn't have any shortage of food, but did you have shortages of gasoline and sugar? Did you have ration cards?
That I don't know.
Okay.
I know that in World War II, when we were married in Kansas City, that we had ration cards. Yeah.
Okay.
But that would be in the 40s.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, what was the weather like growing up?
In California? We had fog in the winter time quite often, but as a rule it was kind of hot in Bakersfield summertime, and it was pleasant.
Okay. And when you moved to Kansas City, is that when you moved to? Right, when you came to Kansas City?
Well, no, afterwards, when we were married, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, Kansas City.
What was the weather like then?
Oh, in September?
Well, when you moved to Kansas, what was it like in Kansas?
Well, just about like it's now.
Like it's now?
Yeah. Snow or winter time, and I don't think that it was as dry. Well, you see, after the when the what was it now? I've got my mind. That's what you say a senior moment. Can't think of what it was. When the Dust Bowl hit, then that's when things got very dry here. But so actually it didn't start, and of course Kansas City was not affected as much as it was out in this area, the farming area. Kansas City was not as affected like that, but as a whole, I think we had uh, plenty of snow and rain and hot weather and good weather. And
I see. Do you remember any major dust storms that happened? I mean,
only what my husband said. He grew up in Ingalls, and as far as now, this is a story that they've told. He and his he had let's see, two. He had two older brothers and a sister, and then he had a younger brother than he was, and so this was on a Sunday, and he and his younger brother, stayed at home while the others they went to Dodge City. They were going to the three older ones and the sister were going to sing in I think as I recall, it was going to be on the radio. They were going to sing, and the parents had gone visiting. When all of us, and so my husband, when he was younger, and his brother, they loved to make what was it? Some kind of a candy. They loved to do that. And so when they were by themselves, when they thought, well, that's what they could do, they could go ahead and make the candy. And about that time, then the dust started building up.
Mm-hmm.
This was out in the country. It started building up, and it got so dark that they couldn't see out. And they thought that the Lord was returning because it got dark. So, yeah, and of course, then I know that during that time that I think it was the two brothers and the sister, they were together with some others, and it got so dark that they had to pull off the road and at a farmhouse on the way to Dodge. So it came up very suddenly, the wind and all of that. But I think, and so it got to be pretty bad as far as that's concerned. And I remember, see, I was at that time I would still be in California, okay, and I was going to high school, and of course, just like you, I had to write. Well, at that time, read papers and all of that. And so for some reason, I was very interested in this part of the country, hearing about their dust that came up with their problems that they have, and for some reason, I don't know why, but anyhow, I was interested in western Kansas. And lo and behold, I ended up coming out here to live. You know how I say how the Lord led, because I met Him and we came after he graduated from dental school and came out here to live. So it was very bad, and I know he he was going to graduate that year too from high school, and it got so bad that they had to close the door for the schools.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, that's so bad. So I think he finally did graduate, but anyhow, let's see what else would be with that story. But I know that they had to uh, when the dust just crept into the house, and it was they couldn't, you know, you could wipe the table off with once, and then maybe be able to eat, and then everything would be covered up again. And it was not fun to live in it. And then he came after he stayed out a year from going on to school because there was no money really as far as that's concerned for him to go. But he had worked on the farm and also did some at that time CCC. That's when the President Roosevelt. That's not what it was called anyhow. He tried to help the young people, you know, or out here in this area to at least have some work to do to earn some money. And so he did a little bit of that. But so then this comes then into the year of I think it was 1930, let's see, he went to school, I think then in 1939. He had been, and that's when it started getting bitter, about that time. Mm-hmm. So that would be 10 years after the Deep Depression, so you can imagine how things were kind of bad. But he was driving a tractor then that day, and he kept going around and around, and he said to himself, there surely must be a better way of making a living than this. So anyhow, after that, then he went to Tabor College, and then he went on to, so that's just a little bit of the story.
So did you yourself ever experience a dust storm?
Well, later on, but not then. In 1954, we had a dust storm. We had dust storms in town here, I mean in this area, in 1954. But it didn't get as bad as earlier.
Okay. Did you ever experience any grasshopper plagues or jackrabbit drives? Or
Only hearing about it.
Do you want to tell me about it? Or
I don't know
what you heard about it?
Well, that the jackrabbits were so bad, yeah, that they were able to have drives where they would, try to kill them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because they would eat the plants and whatnot all, so they had to get rid of them. So that's really only how I can tell you, because I was not living here then at that time.
Okay. You said it closed the school before the dust storms?
Well, in that period of time, and then of course he did graduate, and it was only just a short, period of time that they closed it. But I know it was, I think. Well, I know what I mean to say. He was supposed to graduate, and they had to close it up, and so that he did not really graduate, have any, no graduation exercises.
Oh, okay, like a ceremony. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay, so what did you do for entertainment growing up? Like for fun,
Growing up? Oh my, for fun. Well, I know for fun I like to play jacks, and I like to, that kind of stuff. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I love to play jacks. And, of course, I love to play that with dolls. And, like that. And, let's see. Oh, I remember I liked to, when we lived out of city limits, so that on one side of our where we lived, then to the north of us there was no houses or anything like that. It was all just land, and so I liked to go out. And one time I remember going out there and making a house, drawing a house on the ground, and I even dug a hole for the. I played by myself a lot of times, and even made dug a hole like it was in a sink, and then also for the bathroom. It was just sort of like an outline, and I thought that was kind of fun, and that I remember. But I never did learn to skate or anything like that. I got some skates once for Christmas, and I had to go where there was a sidewalk, because where we lived there was only ground, and so I fell. That was the end of was trying to skate. So.
What sort of news did you hear about World War II?
What sort of? Oh, okay. That's when the first year I was in Tabor. I went there in September, and in December, I believe it was the 7th, wasn't it? Yeah, the 7th. It was on a Sunday, and we girls had been invited over to a family for Sunday dinner, and then we were there in the afternoon, and that's when we heard the President Roosevelt come over the radio and gave his speech.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very distinct in my mind. And of course, then that meant, for us to go into war, that left a lot of questions. But as a result, there were a lot of the boys that had to go on into the service, and from the college there. But now my husband, he didn't have to, because by that time he was in Kansas City, okay, and but I was still in Hillsboro when that happened. So okay, I don't know if you want me to add.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, because the reason he didn't have to go is because at that time in the Army had you could enlist and join the Army, but then you could also continue studying because he was going to be a dentist, and then he would. So that's what he did. So the first, that would have been now in 41, 41, wasn't that? Yeah. And so then he was able to go on then into school and finish. And of course then that leads into the time when the war was over with then by that time. And we had a son born on January the 1st of 1946. And so when he graduated, since he was married and had a child, they were not going to take him into service. So that's kind of that story.
Okay.
But yes, I remember that very much, and of course we went on the train one time we were coming home, I guess it was on Christmas, we were going to come out here for Christmas. Well, actually, it was Hillsborough because the folks lived in Hillsborough, his folks. And he had, in order to earn some side money. Oh, now I have to close. I have to start backing up because he did not continue to be in the Army the last year.
Okay.
So as a result, he had to take. He worked for the at nighttime then, most of the time to earn some money, loading cars, railroad cars, but then so he knew how to get down into the where you load the train, you know. So when we wanted to come out, why we were able to get a seat because we went down in before before the others were in, and so then the train was so crowded that people stood in the aisle, and I remember that we held somebody's baby on our lap, or I did during that time. So there's, and you know, something like that, yes. And then as far as our ticket, we had to have what did you call it?
A ration card?
Yeah, ration cards. So we would stand in line sometimes to get certain items, and I know that there was a little grocery store not too far away from where we lived, and you know, if we wanted the soap, we needed soap or something like that, since we had gotten, you know, we'd been good, we always got our food there at that store, so sometimes they would save things for you. And so I remember getting some soap one time that way. So yeah, there were lots of things that we went through there during that time, but it wasn't anything like where they had actual, you know, war and like that. We had to put up with a lot of things that we just didn't have.
Did your father enlist in the war?
My father, in the First World War.
The first one?
Well, as far as that time of the, now this is kind of interesting in a way. See, the Germany had in the First World War, and Germany was in the Second World War also, as far as that's concerned. But now in the First World War, my dad was at that time working for the railroad, but he was a cook on the section of railway that when there was something wrong with the tracks or something like that, why then he was cooking, I don't know what he cooked, the one that had the kitchen, you know, and so when the war started, then since he was Schmidt was a German name, and so they didn't let him cook anymore because they were afraid he was going to poison the people. But he worked in just as a man that fixed the box cars. But and then so that would have been in First World War, and the Second World War in California. That's when the Japanese got. They were the ones that had. A lot of them were put in behind bars. Not bars, but they had camps you know, like that.
Okay.
So then the Second World War, like that, the Germans, I don't know, we didn't have that much trouble, I don't think.
During Dust Bowls, did you like have to clean your house often?
They did, yeah.
They did.
Mm-hmm.
Did they like hang sheets up on the windows and stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else I should ask you? Like, do you have any stories for me that you'd like to share that you haven't already, or?
Well, you're basically wanting to know about that period of time, as I understand, for your.
Anywhere from the 1930s to the 1940s is fine.
Well, there would be a lot. My story of getting married, that would be very.
Well, if you want to share it, that would be lovely.
Well, okay, because see, as far as the transportation is concerned, they at that time they didn't have a lot of airplanes and things like that they moved things fast like they're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they were transferring troops, they rode the trains like that, so the trains were very, very full. But I know that when and of course, when we got married, we didn't have much money, but my Vernon and his parents came out. Well, okay, I'll start into. I had graduated in 1943 in May, and then I was going to go home, and I went home on the train. I went home for the summer, and we had decided that we were going to get married at Christmas time that same year. Well, then during the summertime, Vernon was able to leave school and to come out here in the summertime to help with the harvest. That time they actually did started having good crops, and so then that was just before he was going to join the army, so that he could go ahead and stay in school. He when he decided to do that, then we also we had to do this all mostly by letter, because you didn't use the telephone to call as much as we do now. And so then we would discuss things, and of course, as far as getting married, my mother really didn't want me to get married to begin with to somebody that lived out here, because then I would not get to come home, And but then we decided that we were going to have to get married before Christmas, and so to make it a longer, so we had to. Each one of us had to decide that we'd have to talk to our parents, Well, it ended up being that we had 3 weeks to get ready to go. I mean, to get everything ready to get married. Of course, we wanted to have a church wedding, and so he and his parents came out by bus. To California, and so then when we got married, we didn't have any way to get back either. But there was in the where I lived, there were a couple of boys that were coming out here to go to Hillsboro to Tabor College, and they had a car, and so we ended up coming back here with the 2 boys and another girl, and she and I and my husband sat in the back seat and the boy sat in the front seat. And so then, that was, you might say, at least it was a way to get,
Yeah.
And it only cost us, I guess, $35 to do that trip instead of more than that. So it's just things like that you just remember that. And then as far as the way it is nowadays, uh, my granddaughter got married this summer, and they got this long, uh, not an ambulance, but from the
Her wedding dress, you mean?
no, the car.
Oh, the car.
A great big long
limousine?
limousine, yeah, limousine, and to ride in. Well, we didn't have anything like that. So, I don't know, as far as they had a hard time as far as that's concerned, because here during the Decibel days, I could tell you too about living in California and having all the, a lot of people left this part of the states to go out to California. And so we had lots and lots of people, so we called them like Okies, coming from Oklahoma, Okies. And I know I had a cousin that he had come out there to California. He was from Oklahoma, and he'd come out there to California to work too, like in the potatoes, and we had lots of food and things like that. And so one time he heard somebody call him an Okie, and oh man, he right away went got his suitcase, and he was going to go to the train and leave. But anyhow, that was kind of not a very good thing. But yeah, things in general, I think even though it was hard here, still it affected everybody as far as that's concerned. I think that's whole, because the people that came out there, they needed work, and a lot of them didn't have work. But most of the time, I think they could work out in the fields and things like that. But there's a story about that too, as far as where I was concerned. Now, the school that I graduated from was just a new school. In Bakersfield, we had one great big high school, and then it would be on the west side, and I lived on the east side. And so then they went ahead and started building another high school. And so I was able to graduate, be the first graduating class in that new school. But the girl that ended up being our valedictorian, she was one of these that came out from, actually, I think she was from Arkansas, but her family, they made baskets, and the mother would make these paper, the dad would make these baskets out of, kind of like pieces of trees, they're not very thick, but they would make, if you could get that in your mind, make little baskets. And then the mother made the paper flowers, and then this girl and her younger sister, they had to go around to all these different houses as they moved to different towns to try and sell these little baskets to make some money. Well, so then they finally got down then to California, and where I lived in Bakersfield, the underpasses like we have here too.
Mm-hmm.
She and her family camped under an underpass, but she was a kind of girl. She was smart, and she came to the school where I was going, and she was very smart. But I was not really that close to her. But it was not until later on that I learned that she was, really a needy person, and that as far as when she graduated from high school, um, one of the boys that was in my class, his father he worked for the county, and his dad signed a paper that allowed her to go get some clothes to graduate from high school. Just things like that you learn and go through. So, yeah, life in lots of ways was hard on. Well, it is now too. In a lot of ways too, for people that are without jobs.
Is there anything else you'd like to add on World War II or Dust Bowls or anything else?
Oh, I don't know. Basically, I think we just have to say that, in life we go ahead and, as far as I'm concerned, I know that I trust the Lord to direct me, that I have Him. And He has helped me go through lots of things that would be difficult. So I don't know what else I might say, but does that give you enough, at least?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's all the questions I have for you.
Okay.
I want to thank you for sharing. Very informative.
So you're a freshman?
I
was so hungry for watermelon, and I remember going to, my dad was sitting on a sofa chair, and I went up to him and I said, I called him Papa. Papa, don't you have at least 50 cents that you could go ahead and go buy a watermelon? So he did. So I think it would be pretty close to that time, because as far as really remembering much when I was a baby, I don't.
Okay, that's all.